how are things different than when we worked together in the past?
Yeah, I mean, so we met, let's see, in 2018, I think. Um, and because I was doing some electrical work with another guy at your new office. So then we talked and kind of hit it off, and I was looking for a new primary care doctor, and boom, it started. So basically, my whole adult life, I struggled with obesity, maybe not severe, but definitely obesity. Always a big guy. And um, So we kind of built a plan back in 2018, 2019, but I just never took it serious enough. It was a great plan. I lost some weight, started feeling a little bit better, and then I just kept the party going. So moving forward after that, after that, when COVID happened and, and then you closed the practice down. Um, so I just kind of just rock and roll. No doctor for a while, and then finally, um, getting into fast forward we're in like 2021. Um, I finally got health insurance. Found a doctor. Was like, hey, let's. I need blood pressure medicine. We need to try to take care. I go see this doctor, and we do lab work, and he saw him in that morning. I left. I did lab work. I went to work. And later that afternoon, he personally called me and he was like, hey, your labs came back. They're really bad. You need to go to the emergency room. And I'm like, nah. So I kind of shrug it off, go home, go about my normal business. Call my mom the next morning, actually stopped by their house. I said, "Hey, this is what's going on." She had just retired from the hospital. She's really familiar with the whole environment. And I said, "Hey," he called, said these labs are bad, and she said, "You're going. You're going." He said, "Go to the emergency room. You need to go." So we go to the emergency room, and they knew I was coming. They checked me in, and phew, ICU. I went. And so when I went into the hospital, basically severe anemia. I was really low on blood. My blood oxygen count was in the low 60s. I was like a dead man walking. I was just shy of 400 pounds when I went into the hospital, and I was there for I think 4, 5, 6 days, somewhere around there. But it was almost didn't make it, so it was really a time for a change. So I I'm an entrepreneur. I work for myself. I work primarily by myself all the time. I have help very little bit of the time, and so I do a lot of driving, and I'm out of town a lot, and so I listen to Joe Rogan podcast a lot, and he had a cardiologist on his podcast, and um, I kind of liked what he touched based on. He's got a book called The PIP Diet. It's like a Mediterranean diet. Um, Now this is fast forwarding into like 2000, 2023, the beginning of 2023. Um, I lost about 50 pounds from the hospital stay until 2023. Reading the PIP diet book in 2023. I uh I really liked that it was low carb. It really reminded me a lot of what we went over in your previous practice. A lot of the same stuff that we hit on, so it seemed real familiar. I was so sick at the time that I didn't even really know. Um, it just didn't register. But so I started doing this kind of following this Piapi diet, and it I start dropping weight. Um, 20 pounds, 20 pounds, 20 pounds. And now I get down through 23, coming to the beginning of 2024. And now I've lost about 120 pounds in a year. And it's strictly diet and exercise. So I'm seeing a regular primary care doctor. I've seen a blood specialist for continual checkup and stuff from, I kind of, I feel like I plateau to a point of, I don't know. I think I feel pretty good. I got my weight down to manageable. I'm in like the 230s ish.
And you're
And
a tall guy too. So
yeah, 6'1" and a half. I'm
yeah,
almost 6'2".
you're not a frail guy by any means, but still.
No, no. And so I've asked I've seen a nutritionist a couple times. I asked my primary care doctor, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?" And there's really I don't really have any guidance on what I should do next for uh dietary, exercise, any type of regimen. So now I am kind of like I'm second guessing myself of am I eating the right stuff? Am I exercising right? Am I getting enough? Am I pushing too hard at work? I don't really know where to go. So finally, I always kept you in the back of my mind, and I reached back out and to have a consult, see, hey, can we build a game plan? And and we did. And the testing that you have and that you offer for I think it's right what I need. I mean, it's exactly what I need. So,
Let's
we
let's
made the
let's unfold that for a second. So
yeah,
when you circled back to me, and then the entire process that I've built out since my direct primary care days, right?
yeah,
Um, did you could you appreciate the need for me to ask as many questions as I did and understand like why it would have been so difficult for that first touch base and all the stuff that you've been through the few years that we'd not been working together, the importance of that process?
yeah. I mean, it's super important to have, and it's super helpful. Um, Having all that
I mean, had
together.
anybody asked you that level of questioning before? I mean, even
No,
myself previously.
no, no,
And did
no.
it seem like it was useful? Like, huh, it's strange that nobody ever asked me that before. Like, that seems like that is important.
Yeah, it definitely seems important. I think for me, it instantly hit with me that hey, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions, and it almost instantly brought you up to speed on what had happened with me over the past 3 years, and we hadn't even spoke. I mean, so I think I mean that's a ton right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So as we kind of build a game plan um, with the micronutrient testing, NAD testing. Um, to kind of make heads or tails of where I should go next, what I should be eating, how we should exercise. I mean, how I should exercise moving forward. And so we got all that. Um, I was already supplementing pretty good with AG1. Um, that's something that seemed to work fairly well for me. Um, and so I think my numbers may not have been as bad as some people that you see, but we still had the big time tweak things, right? So we get custom catered vitamins now that started coming in. I started taking an NAD supplement, and almost instantly, um, I could tell huge difference. So this year, towards about the past 6 months of this year, has been really tough for me because it's kind of feast or famine with work when it comes in. And I'm an electrician by trade, but what I do is pretty much niche market type work. So sometimes you get a bunch of it, sometimes you don't. So the past 6 months, I've gotten a ton of it. So I've pushed really hard trying to get it all done, primarily being by myself. So I noticed almost right off the rip of starting to take uh, the custom catered vitamins and the NAD supplement that it was like jet fuel. Um, so
What does that
I was
mean?
able to.
If we're down the right path, one of the biggest things that people say is, well, doc, maybe it's placebo. And the interesting thing to me is that, well, if it's placebo and you've been doing these other things and you felt some benefit or this or that, and then they tell me that later on they have decided to do their own experiments where they may stop something, see how they feel, et cetera. And then they're like, oh no, that really was making an impact. So when you say jet fuel to Dan, what does jet fuel mean to Dan? Is it cognitive? Is it physical? Is it better sleep? Is it, what is, because jet fuel, for some people, they really just need to sleep better. And that's a
Yeah,
big deal.
I think for this is that sometimes for me sleep's out the window. So unfortunately, um, typical work day for me is physical in the between like the 10 and 14 hours, maybe 16-hour range of work, and that's like 6 or 7 days a week. So that when you do that, you're packing ladders, you're packing tools. It just beats you down over time. Even if you get 8, 10 hours of sleep, you really get beat down. So when I started taking these supplements, I, within maybe not overnight, but within 2 weeks, I start feeling like, wow, maybe you're more alert at first, but then I think that as time goes on through the day, you don't get tired as fast. And that's what I immediately started to notice. Then it's like you're pushing harder. Now you might be working 14 hours, 15 hours, you might work 16 hours. And you're just kind of lean, like I say, you're leaning on it a little bit. You're leaning on it kind of a lot harder maybe than you were for any time in the past few years. I think that's what it means for me. The mental clarity part, um, it's almost like subtle because you don't maybe right at first you kind of feel something and you're like, ah, maybe that is kind of like a placebo, and you kind of discount it like, I don't really know. Maybe I'm making that up in my own mind. But then as time goes on, it's like, wow, I'm pretty. I don't have the foggy days. I don't have um the ailments that maybe you had nagging at you.
Mhm.
I've never really been one that has like I have like my knee hurts or my back hurts, or I think I've been kind of blessed to not have those issues all the time, even being so big. But definitely the mental, and then the fatigue. The fatigue is definitely just not there. That's
Yeah. And so is it like would you think it's useful? So a common impact that happens is that people start feeling so good they forget how bad they felt, right? It's almost you got to do the retrospective test of like you get a new normal that it's hard to even fathom. Maybe it's not even bad because you were in a great space, honestly. What I was trying to get you to, you got there even though you were on the other side of almost saying hi to the other realm of the world.
right.
Thank God you didn't. So glad you didn't. But like you weren't necessarily, if I was in my old insurance-based practice days, I would have checked the box on Dan and said, Dan's rocking. Dan's
Yeah.
good. There's not much more that Dan needs I can do or otherwise based in the insurance-based model of the testing you have is what you got and you're not allowed to leave and use other testing that would give you other insights. I mean, I feel like that's the best way I can describe this clinic is that you're just not allowed to because insurance doesn't want to pay for it. And if you're in the insurance world, you got to do the insurance rules. But that doesn't mean that other things aren't useful. Your hands are kind of tied, and so is your time. And
Yeah.
so, looking back at Dan on the other side of being 230 pounds and a profound entrepreneur, Dan's good. So the fact that Dan got even better, you got even better, is a different storyline than where most doctors' offices and most patients where they say, this is it. This is as good as it's going to be. There's not much else I can do. But I also want to commend you because, you know, there is a level of leaning into this that I can't force, that I don't want to force, but
Right.
that you have to trust and stare at the biochemical chart with me because this is what we're looking at, right? Of, yeah, we're talking about your cells, right? So I think we got the jet fuel. I think we got the jet fuel hammered down what that means to you. But like, it is a big deal when people take for granted the ability. The best way I could say it is what I hope translates to most of my clients is that jet fuel is not accidentally, but like seemingly to them accidentally having better days of productivity, better nights of sleep, better clarity in projects they may be working on, more physical stamina, whether it's required by work or some type of leisure activity that they're training for, but that it's a level of ease just by trying to learn about their body and implementing what their body is wanting, needs to change.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think that on being on both sides of the spectrum of being super sick, super weak all the time, and then you just function. And how I functioned back then, I don't know. And I think your brain, at least from my personal experience, the brain takes when you're in a bad place and then you move on from that place, your brain almost blocks some of that stuff out. And it just seemed, and it's to protect you from that. So like as I've moved on and kind of made steps moving forward, I'm like, oh, man, I've never felt this good. We're in like 2022. I'm like, wow, I haven't felt like this since I was in high school. Wow. But and then that's continuing to build. 2023, it's like, wow, I've improved yet again. Then when I plateaued, and now I'm like, I'm still continuing to improve. Um, and I think that at least for me, your brain is just it blocks all that old stuff out. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
continues doing that as you build. Now when I've been focusing on more of the zone two cardio stuff that we've been working on, and I really it makes like a drastic difference. I'm just a few weeks into now the work has slowed down some for the year. I'm hitting more of the zone two cardio stuff. It makes a huge impact just on your normal breathing. You're getting up, putting your pants on, putting your socks on. Um,
We haven't even had a chance to talk about this in
no,
our clinical setting, so this is exciting to hear.
yeah. Well, and it's been something that I really struggled. We had a plan. I got really busy. My exercise regimen kind of slacked off. I'm still getting a bunch of physical activity with work, but the stuff that we set out to kind of accomplish before, I had to kind of push to the wayside
Sure.
for a while.
Life happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And then now that I'm trying to put as my mom tells me all the time, you got to put your health first. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to put the health first.
Well, I think it's if we really did an analysis of our lives, myself included, looking backwards, right? We have no problem investing and maintaining our cars. Some people of us overly religiously. We have no problem investing and protecting and keeping things working in our houses or in my business building. Good God, that was a lot of work back in the day. Like it's very interesting how we've been trained to where we spend our money, our time, and what we consider valuable of our possessions. And yet we don't often, nor are we really trained to think about our bodies, right? That
Right.
we should be investing in, like, you got your, God, what is it? All the different, you got your silver, your gold, your platinum, your diamond things that you can get when you buy a new car for long, pay up front, and then you get all this service built in, right? And you say, oh yeah, that's good. I mean, we really actually don't even get that in the insurance-based system. But let's just say we did. But the truth is yeah, but it's like, well, yeah, you changed my oil, but it's not picking up the way it used to. Well, it's going down the road though. Aren't you happy about that? Yeah, but I mean, it's not that I'm asking it even to do more. I'm asking the car to do the same as 10,000 miles ago. We'll just be happy that the car is going down the road. It's a little bit of how we kind of think about some level of medicine. So I am pro, and I always want to say this, but like I'm pro as far as people doing what they need to do in the healthcare system. I say that this clinic picks up where they stop being able to help. Not because the doctors don't want to, or the nurse practitioners, or the PAs. It's not that. It's just that their hands are tied. They're locked into a system. They're limited in the amount of testing they can do. It's just the way it is. And for people to have that experience of, I just want the car, let's just make it easy and say, I want the car to function like it did 10,000 miles ago, maybe even better, you know. It's not an option otherwise. You have
Right.
to go and invest elsewhere, and it's just the way things are. And God willing, things change in the future for us.
I'm now going to be permanently at high risk for like liver and pancreas cancer because of the damage that I did. So you go to your regular doctor, your insurance based stuff, and they say, okay, well, we're gonna form a game plan for cancer screening. So you're gonna go once a year for the next 9 years to get an MRI to check your liver and your pancreas. So we do that, and this is something that became a thing right as I started to come see you again. And so would go to my primary care doctor and say, hey, and I'm not bad. I like this guy a lot. I'm not bashing him at all. It's not so not to put any negative light out there. It's just I think this it's just how it is. But he we get the results back from the MRI, and the MRI is like, yeah, you have initially I was diagnosed with severe life-ending cirrhosis. Okay, so now the cirrhosis is gone. I have lesions on my liver and my pancreas. Hopefully they continue to heal, and that's the goal. But I said, so what can we do in the meantime? Is there anything we can do in the meantime? Because I'm told by the specialist that liver and pancreas cancer, if you get one of those, it's an uphill battle to beat those ones. So I say, hey, what do we do moving forward? Um, and the answer is like, oh, well, you follow up with a liver specialist, and you're just do the MRI testing. So what happens in between, if you in the whole year, if you form cancer in that in the year, then there's nothing. There's no game plan, there's no explanation, there's no anything.
And that's actually part of why the gallery testing that we offer is useful, is because also a lot of our cancer screening and or monitoring, making sure that things don't progress into something cancerous. So the architecture, the characteristics when we're looking on imaging that say, whatever this is looks very suspicious versus something that's like a simple cyst. And we know it's a simple cyst. And then there are other cysts that are like, that's a complicated cyst. We got to keep a closer eye on it, right? So we know by looking at those things, but the problem is that with the cancers that really are harmful to people, like, and you listed two of them, and you can throw in stomach, esophageal, ovarian, uterine, uh, gallbladder, some of these are like some of the biggest lethal hitters. And also they are hard to detect. There's not routine screening for it. You and I've talked about this. And you're dependent on a lot of the screening saying that you find it on imaging or on physical exam. And by then, that means you've got a tumor mass, you've got enough cancer cells that are large enough that there's the risk of metastasis of that cancer from original site traveling someplace else. And so, uh, you know, when we talked about the gallery test, that was what I was trying to get at. Mark Hyman calls it the liquid biopsy. I don't know if I'm in love with that term, but we should be moving science forward instead of staying in the same pathways. And part of my frustration as a primary care doctor in the past was exactly what you said, which is monitor, monitor, monitor without any type of, and you can't do it in a 15-minute visit. So I'm not picking on anybody, but like without being able to say, hey, are you aware of how blood sugar being out of control creates profound inflammation? How high consumption of energy, food, glucose, whatever, all the time is a state where you're not going to put your body into a minor stress response, so it kind of cleans up cells periodically, right? And so, but the frustration of just like monitoring and hoping that something isn't big enough to be found is a miserable experience if you've got something on your mind versus saying, it would be great if I had a blood test that we could take a look and see if some of these markers are leaning towards a risk that I should have further investigated or monitored much more closely versus you're good one year, like you said, and then aggressive cancers plow through people very quickly, unfortunately, and then you're behind the eight ball. And
Right.
so same thing. It's like when we go get our oil change in our car, I think the right polite thing would be to do is that they throw a scanner code on your car every time you get your oil change, kind of like the gallery test, so that you know if
Right.
something's not working, not just looking at greasing greasing the gears, right? Like that's actually, if we were going to try to do the right thing from a car analogy perspective, we'd throw that scanner code on there and say, is something starting to malfunction early before it becomes something big and now the car is breaking down on the side of the road? So that's, you know, simplest analogy I can give people is that's kind of what I'm trying to do in this clinic, and also saying, oh, that tiny little bushing that doesn't seem like a big deal cellularly, if that bushing keeps wearing out and or breaks, snaps, or otherwise, it's going to go down the rest of your axle.
Right.
I think that's the right analogy. Maybe
Well, one
not.
of the things that can,
One of the things, yeah. But like, but that's not how we're taught in medicine in general. And it's not because we're bad doctors, it's because that's how we're programmed, which is we look for the big stuff and then we kind of back build a little bit, and then we try to either we turf off, we do a drug, we do whatever. But in the day-to-day living that most people, I think, um, you know, as a fellow Gen Xer, I think you're a Gen X, that basically in medicine we're saying we want something different. And also we want to know what we need to do on the daily, not just on the once a year or 5 year preventative plan of screening for stuff, which actually isn't preventative. It's just looking for the bad stuff every few years of how do I, to the best of my knowledge, how can I avoid these things? To the best of my knowledge, how can I make this car go as long as it can, the best it can, as efficient as it can, right?
yeah.
Car being our
Well,
body. So
and I don't think that our bodies aren't, it, my take is that they're not just like a set it and forget it type thing. You, I think you got to continually tweak at it to, because it change, as it changes, as you change and you change lifestyle. Like for me, it's continued to change, and then sometimes your body might get lazy with that, and you've got to kind of tweak it and go this way, and tweak it and go that way. And it's
absolutely.
that's
I
my
mean,
thought moving
and
forward.
going back to the car analogy, because everybody says, oh, car, yeah, that's so simple. Well, let's think this through, right? Like the person that drives their car 1,000 miles a month versus the person that drives their car 5,000 miles a month, right?
Yeah,
The car that is down in Florida versus that's getting maybe some salt exposure from being down by the ocean, maybe not, versus the car that's up in Cleveland that's getting
yeah,
salt exposure all the time, right? So
right,
even the car analogy, if we were able to take our bodies and who we are and break it down from that angle of like, even a car actually isn't that simple. The person who drives the car and hits their accelerator immediately versus the person that's always slow on the gas
yeah,
accelerator, right? The person who slams the brakes and pumps the brakes all the time versus the person that is a nice,
yeah.
make the car instructor proud kind of person.
That's right.
But like, but those being able to think through all the different ways, and that's part of what this clinic really doesn't try. I think some people get very excited about the micronutrient and the NAD testing and exclusion and don't realize that as well, which you've already hit on, is that it's not just that. That's greasing the wheels, so to speak, for everything else that we learn about somebody in our testing that we're trying to accomplish. So whether that's switching up the type of exercise, are they over exercising? Are they
Right,
exercising a good amount, but they're sleeping poorly, and nobody's talked to them about that? Are they actually in sleep apnea land and they didn't know it because they don't have a wearable and they're not realizing that their oxygen saturation is dropping overnight? And or somebody poo-pooed and said, oh, it's not bad enough to give you a CPAP, but actually it keeps waking them up, right?
right,
Like, so you got all these different variables, and by the time you got to me, there was a ton of variables you'd already weeded out. Wonderful. But then it became the question of what does Dan need to actually learn about his body? Like
right,
to what Dan wants, not just me saying do this for what? It's about what are you trying to go after? If you're telling me you want to go perform in high rocks, you want to go do your elite level endurance
right,
training, etc. That's different than Dan saying, I just want to kill it at work really well and have a lot of physical stamina.
right,
And I don't need you doing other things, right? Like, but there are going to be certain things you're going to do because we want you to have longevity and we want you to feel good. And
right,
I think you know this as you were talking about with your plateaus earlier, but like at the end of the day, the body responds to what the stimulus you give it. So you give it the same
right,
stimulus for 10 years, it's going to stop responding. You give it the same stimulus for 2 months for some people, it stops responding. Whether that's a nutrition change, a calorie change, an exercise change, whatever, right? We take care of a micronutrient deficiency. It adapts. Good. Awesome. What else pops up?
I mean, and I've already told a lot of my friends this, just about anybody I know that has any type of if you have an ailment that you can't fix with your regular doctor, which is probably a few of them, um, then I would say call Dr. B because and I do that all the time. It's that way you can form the plan that's custom catered to you. Uh, that I mean, I think that's the easiest way I can put it, or the best way I can put it. You know, the plan that you have with me and the plan that you have with John down the street is going to be totally different, you know. So I think when you go to the regular doctor, you and John get the same treatment, you know, and you don't get that.
Yeah,
Uh,
and mostly it's there's not a there's not a plan for optimization. There's not a plan for trying to dig a little bit deeper at the cellular level. We believe very much so in the cellular level when we're looking for cancers, ironically,
right,
right? We look at pathology, the pathologist, we have take the cells out, slice them down, we look under the microscope, we stain them to look for things. But like in traditional medicine, that's where we stop thinking about the cell, really. It's mostly organ system, and organ systems even then don't work in silos, but that's how we treat it. Is this thing doesn't really relate to that and that. You go see that specialist, and they're going to say do this, and you're going to see that, and you're going to say how do I marry these things, and it's going to be, and it's not because disease. We are wonderful at acute care, and we're pretty darn good at cancer care when you're already behind the eight ball. We're pretty decent at that in the United States, but we are really miserable at chronic disease management. And most of chronic disease management, like that, and you've experienced this, has to do with metabolic struggles, has to do with metabolic inflexibility, has to do with the body not either getting too much, too little energy, not using it effectively, not putting a demand on it, like all these different gaps, but it comes down to the day-to-day decisions that we're making. There's not good guidance on the day-to-day decisions. And not just that, for each person, based off their genetics, based off of where one of the hard discussions I have is when we're looking at somebody's genetic labs and then I'm looking at their cholesterol labs. And would I want to make my job easy and say, oh, well, these are the macros that your genetics came up with you, but really that's kind of for an optimization of like once you're good. It gives us a hint for sure.
right.
But if somebody needs to utilize more energy that's already on their frame, on their body, increase percent adipose tissue, body fat, then we probably got to tweak what these macros are for right now because we need to give it the right stimulus to get it where it's going. And so I hear what you're saying that each plan needs to be different for everybody, and that's the intentionality. It does have to be
Yeah.
different for people, and wherever their starting place is too. Some people can glide right in here and they're in a great place, and then it's just we're just taking them to the next level, trying to get them to feel even better. Some people have been, rolling around in the mud for a long time, not because they've been trying. They've been doing the dirty work, trying to get it done, and they just can't put the pieces together. And that's part of what we try to do here.
Yeah.
All right.
And I've seen it with a lot. I mean, close friends and family. They people try similar diets and they all get different results, right? And then I think they all look at each other and they say, "Well, I don't understand. He did this and this is working. I'm doing this and it's doing the opposite." I mean, you just you don't if you don't test, then you never know. I
Absolutely.
mean,
And also it's a process, it's a journey. So clients that have come to see me in the past that I see them one time and I never hear from them again. And if I hear from from wherever that, oh, they're not doing great or this or that, or I always want to say, and also it's a process. So what we're building out from a plan for some people, we're going to have to tweak. And also you're going to have to be consistent. And some people need that accountability. And so it's one of those things of like, I truly want more people to kind of look at this clinic as uh, it is a pathway forward. It is not a dunk you and you're done. It's not like a
oh no,
baptism and then you're you're clean again.
no,
It is a it is a this is you. And unless you can promise, it probably drives people nuts when I say this, but if you can promise me you'll stop aging, don't age one more day, and if you can promise me you'll do the exact same thing that you're already doing, then we probably don't have to change anything. Probably don't need to look into anything, right? But that's not reality. And
right,
so it is a process. Same thing. You don't get your car oil changed one time and say, good for the life of the car. That's not how it
Right,
works, right?
right. You'll be buying a new car.
Yeah, right. Can you tell me any stories about anybody noticing anything about you since implementing some of your journey here with MetaboLab? Like anybody, any comments, otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the weight loss journey I've had is been since been over the past couple years. I think it's just a sticker shock for anyone that I mean, no, most people don't recognize me. People I went to high school with,
I mean, I was
people
very surprised when I saw you when you came into the
right.
clinic.
And it's weird because I don't necessarily see myself that way because your brain doesn't put it all together. That I still look in the mirror and I'm like, hey, I'm the same, you know, because I just and maybe that will change over time. Yeah, I think it everybody everybody's shocked. Um,
So you told me that your mom noticed your skin.
yeah, yeah, she did. She did. Well, and there has been some other people that noticed, and I don't know. You mentioned it too the last time I saw you in person was my color. So before I went in hospital in 21, and I had friends and a lot of other people after I got out of the hospital, they were like, "Man, for a long time you were gray. Your color was like gray." And then again, I never saw it, and especially didn't pick it up back then. But now, uh, no, my mom, some friends have also said my color is just really good. Your pigment, whatever. Your skin looks good. I do notice, personally, I notice a big difference like in my joints and my kneecaps and my elbows. I notice that they're not near as dry. That was something I noticed basically right off the rip.
Yeah,
Um,
'cause as an electrician, you're down on your knees a lot. You're doing awkward things, leaning and
yeah,
stuff up in whatever, up in the ceiling. Like
yep,
you put a lot of demand on those skin surfaces. And so you were saying you were almost kind of getting like scaly plaque kind of stuff was
yeah,
forming.
yeah. When you're, I mean, because you crawl on your knees almost not every day, but I'm gonna give it the majority of your time you're crawling on your knees and you're banging your elbows against stuff. So that makes a huge difference. I mean, from that aspect.
With the new testing, right? We did the cardiometabolic labs in my old clinic, and that's how I got to this nerdy place that I'm in now. Um, but with the newer testing that I offer people, what has been the biggest like, huh, or had no idea, or man, I wish I'd known that before.
I'm sensitive to dietary fat. So, and I didn't know that before. So, primarily my focus with diet up until I started coming back to you again was a higher fat, medium protein, low carb. And what I think what we found through all the testing now is that I'm sensitive, my cholesterol is sensitive to the fat. So I've had to tweak the fat content down and jack the protein up, still keep the carbs low. Um, that that that's been like huge because uh, you don't know. I mean, unless you test for it, you would never know. So
Yeah,
that
100%.
yeah, that's been the biggest thing I think that sticks out in my mind.
I think that the that is becoming a bigger discussion point with new clients as well. Because when anybody hears these influencers on social media talking about, your basic cholesterol panel and this thing doesn't matter, you're a lean mass hyper responder, don't pay attention to that. And it's like there's so much more, the science is in the details of understanding somebody's cholesterol deeper. And just going off a basic cholesterol panel does not show you everything you need. But then if you were just looking at a cholesterol panel and you're scratching your head and you're like, I don't understand, for like, for example, people who are doing exclusively like, whether it's dirty keto, clean keto, whatever, but higher fat ratio,
Mm,
and then their cholesterol panel comes back berserk. And if we see this on somebody's genetics, the answer isn't, it doesn't give them a clean pass that, well, it's just that. It's just your genetics. It's a, well, also there's still, that's a problem. We need to make sure that that's what's happening here. And also we don't need those numbers that high. They shouldn't be
right.
that high, right? If we're worried about plaque forming and cardiovascular system. So I think when people are shooting from the hip and don't understand everything, and where they go on a Reddit forum and somebody else says, "Yeah, man, it's all good. My doctor said the same thing. It's BS. I've never felt better." And that's fine. The issue is that most people, I shouldn't say that's fine, that's interesting. It's because you don't feel bad until you feel bad. You don't feel bad until you have a heart attack. And when you have your heart attack, you have your heart attack. You don't have a
Right.
pre-heart attack for most people. It just
Right.
slams them. You don't just have a pre-stroke for a lot of people. You just have a stroke, right? And so you're good until you're not. And that kind of attitude in America is not, it doesn't work for longevity, for sure.
Right.
But also it goes back to, yeah, well, we want the manual for each person. We want to know more. And so you knowing that about your body, it isn't a, well, it's just that's why my cholesterol is berserk because my body doesn't do well with fat. Well, that's a reason to not consume fat. That's also a reason to cut it back and recheck and see, was that the thing? Because if it's not, that still means that you're possibly in a higher energy state. Too much energy is coming in, and if we're worried about fatty liver or anything like that, that's still a relevant discussion. You've got to get down to it, not necessarily to find the root problem. The root problem, we need to figure out how we get out of it. That's actually what we're going after, right? Last one, Dan, you've been
Yep.
awesome. You kind of hinted at this, but I'm going to ask you very directly. Who would you recommend to our clinic for if we're exploring our services? What type of person or what type of needs?
Anybody that is, I think for one, the type of person that would be like me. If you feel that you've plateaued and you don't know where to go, I would definitely, that they would be one. The other person that would be, they think that they're at the top of their game. They should probably come and check and see if they're actually at the top of their game. Because if you don't check, you don't know. I mean, and you don't know if you're feeling good until you feel good. It kind of works the same with, if you don't know that you're feeling bad, or you didn't know you were feeling bad till you feel good. Well, you don't know that you're feeling good until you're actually feeling good. I mean, as that, for me, that continues to change. Um, I think for people that, if you're having any maybe cognitive stuff, you're kind of foggy sometimes. But it doesn't have to be that it's really all about losing weight. I think, but if you're trying to better yourself in any of the boxes you want to check, weight, mental health, whatever, they would be a good candidate too. It. I think everybody can take something from it. If they're willing to put the work in, because it doesn't work for itself. You've got to kind of put the work into it. So that
Awesome.
that would be. I think that's the other stipulation for all the people. They have to put the work in. You know, and they can't be a know-it-all and know everything, because you got to work the system. You've got to put the time into it.
Amen. Yeah. Well, and not just that, work work doesn't mean, I always want to say consistency, because part of my job is helping to create the first layer plan for people of, this is where I think we need to start. Let's go. And then it's are we singing? Is everything amazing? Or is it's not going as well, or something's off? But I can't problem solve any of that for anybody if I don't have the consistency and as much as somebody leaning on me, I'm leaning on my clients, that
Right.
they're going to be able to tell me accurately and honestly what's going on. And so for a lot of people, I feel like we've been trained in all matters, America, not just health, of the magic bullet, right? The magic something, the single thing that's going to move the needle for people from a health perspective. And when I have clients that, I probably should listen to my gut a little bit more and be a little bit more frank with people and say, I think what you're looking for is the one single thing that's going to be a cure-all. And the truth is, it is that's and most people who've come to me know that already, because they've already dabbled and done this, and it is a consistency, it is a lifestyle change, it is a longevity passion project that needs to happen for people if you really mean it. And if you don't mean it, that's okay. Just don't say that, because I'm taking you
Right.
really seriously that that's really your goal. So, for individuals let's say, for, as I tell people, the 99.9%, it all happens outside these clinic doors. It's the
Right.
execution. You do it yourself. You're amazing at it. You get it done. We tweak, we fine tune. You know, I
Oh
think you
yeah.
know this. As I'm able, if I find something better, a better test, something else that answers another question, a collaboration that will help assist people, I'm all for it. Like I will. This is not a set it. This is not a set it and forget it clinic.
Right.
I'm constantly trying to strive and figure out how else can I serve somebody with what needs, what over time is a trend that needs to be addressed that I did not see it initially, but there's no way I could have seen it before, right? And that's even like with my NAD testing. That's even with my micronutrient testing. Didn't offer that initially when I rebooted the clinic, but it was one of those things of like I'm missing something. So Dan, thank you so much for sharing your testimonial. It means the
For
world.
yeah,
Uh,
for I'm
People got
glad
to
to.
hear it from people, and I don't actually enjoy talking about what I do or what we offer. Like I do, don't take that the wrong way, but like I don't enjoy it when people's eyes glaze over because they don't understand the impact it can create because people need to hear people's stories.
Right.
So, thank you.
Yeah, definitely.